The Grand Academy of Xenological Studies stood as a marvel of architecture in the center of Proxima City, capital of the Galactic Confederation. Its spiraling towers gleamed under the light of 3 suns, and students from 1,000 worlds walked its halls. Viralith adjusted her uniform as she entered Professor Zarthal's classroom. Her scaled skin shimmered with a blue iridescence that marked her as a draconid, one of the most respected predator species in the Confederation. She took her seat near the front, straightening her posture to display the ridge of spines along her back, a sign of good breeding among her kind. Today, Professor Zarthal announced, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, we discuss the most fascinating topic in xenobiology, Deathworlders. The classroom buzzed with excitement. Viralith felt her chest swell with pride. Everyone knew the draconids evolved on Terrax 7, one of the harshest planets in the known galaxy. Professor Zarthal activated the holographic display. Images of Terrax 7 filled the room, lightning storms that lasted for months, seas of acid, predators with teeth longer than a student's arm. Deathworlders, the professor continued, his voice rising dramatically, are those rare species who evolved on planets that tried their best to kill them. He gestured to Viralith and several other students. The Draconids, the Vorax, the Chitauri, these are the galaxy's survivors. The only ones who know what it means to evolve in constant danger. Viralith nodded, her eyes meeting those of the other Deathworlders in the room. They shared a silent understanding. They were special, elite, different from the soft-skinned species who evolved on gentle worlds. Our kind, Professor Zarthal said with unmistakable pride, as he himself was a Vorax, are the only true Deathworlders in the Confederation. This gives us certain advantages. A small hand rose from the back of the room. The professor paused, his upper eyes narrowing. Yes, you have a question? The students turned to look at the source of the interruption. A small figure stood, barely visible behind the much larger Ergolian sitting in front of her. Has anyone here ever heard of a planet called Earth? The voice was soft but clear, with an accent Viralith couldn't place. The speaker stepped into the aisle to be better seen. She was tiny, barely reaching the chest height of most students. Her skin was a uniform pinkish tan without scales, plates, or exoskeleton. Her limbs looked fragile, with no visible claws or natural weapons. 2 simple eyes, a small nose, and a lipless mouth completed what Viralith thought was the most vulnerable-looking sentient she'd ever seen. Professor Zarthal's expression shifted from annoyance to amusement. And you are? Ilara Hayes, the small being said. I'm an exchange student. I'm human. The word meant nothing to most of the class, but Viralith noticed how the professor's upper eyes widened slightly before he composed himself. Human? He repeated the word as if testing it. I'm not familiar with that species designation. Ilara nodded. We're relatively new to interstellar travel. But I asked about Earth, our homeworld. The professor's forearms made a dismissive gesture. There are millions of habitable worlds in the Confederation. I can't be expected to know every minor planet. It's not in the Confederation, Ilara said, her voice still quiet but somehow filling the room. Earth is different. I believe your classification system would call it a death world. A ripple of whispers spread through the classroom. Viralith felt her spines rise involuntarily. A death world not on the official records? Professor Zarthal's laughter cut through the murmurs. Young student, I understand the desire to feel special. Many species claim their homeworlds were more dangerous than they actually were. It's a common cultural tendency. I'm not claiming anything, Ilara said. I'm just asking if anyone has heard of Earth. Viralith studied the small alien more carefully. Despite her fragile appearance, there was something in the way she stood, a quiet confidence that seemed at odds with her physical vulnerability. I think, the professor said with exaggerated patience, that we should return to actual scientific facts rather than discuss obscure worlds that may or may not exist. If this Earth were truly a death world, its inhabitants would show the universal traits of deathworld species. He gestured toward Viralith and the other recognized Deathworlders. Enhanced strength, natural weapons, redundant organ systems, armored exteriors. These are the adaptations that true Deathworlders develop. As we can all see, you have none of these traits. The class laughed, and Viralith found herself joining in, though something about the situation made her uncomfortable. Ilara didn't seem bothered by the laughter. She simply nodded and sat down. "Thank you, Professor. I was just curious." "Curiosity is commendable," Professor Zarthal said, his tone making it clear the discussion was over. "Now, as I was saying before the interruption," the lecture continued, but Virilith couldn't focus on the professor's words. Her eyes kept drifting back to the small alien in the rear of the classroom. When class ended, Virilith found herself lingering, watching as Ilara packed her materials. The human moved with a strange efficiency, her actions precise and deliberate. Virilith approached her, aware of how her shadow fell over the smaller being. "Your question was interesting," she said. Ilara looked up, and Virilith was struck by the intensity in those simple eyes. There were no nictitating membranes, no compound structures, just brown irises that somehow seemed to see more than they should. "Thank you," Ilara said. "Most people don't want to hear about Earth. Is it really a death world?" Virilith asked, lowering her voice. Ilara's lips curved upward in what Virilith recognized from her xenology studies as a smile, a human expression of amusement or pleasure. "By your Confederation's classification system?" "Absolutely." She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to know more?" Something in Virilith's instincts, the deep predator's sense that had kept her ancestors alive on Terax 7, prickled with warning. This conversation felt dangerous somehow, yet she found herself nodding. "Yes," she said, "I would." "Meet me at the library archives, section X9 after final bell," Ilara said, slinging her bag over one shoulder. "Bring no one, tell no one." Before Virilith could respond, the human walked away. Her small form soon lost in the crowd of much larger students flooding the hallway. From across the emptying classroom, Professor Zarthal watched the exchange, all four of his eyes narrowed in concern. When the students had gone, he touched a communication device on his wrist. "Security Chief," he said quietly. "We may have a situation. The human has made contact." Section X9 of the library was rarely visited by students. Located in the oldest part of the academy, its shelves held physical books and data crystals considered too outdated to be worth transferring to the main database. Dust floated in the air, visible in the dim light. Virilith arrived 10 minutes early, her predator's caution making her check for observers before entering. The section appeared empty, but as she moved between the tall shelves, she caught a familiar scent. "You came." Ilara's voice came from behind a stack of ancient star charts. The human sat at a small table, a portable data terminal in front of her. She looked even smaller in the large chair designed for the average Confederation species. "I'm curious," Virilith admitted, taking a seat across from her. The chair creaked under her weight. "Is Earth real? Or is this some kind of joke?" Ilara's expression remained serious. "Earth is very real, and what your professor said today was either a lie or a result of censorship." "Censorship? The Confederation doesn't censor scientific knowledge." The human made that lip-curving expression again, a smile, but this time it held no warmth. "There's a lot the Confederation keeps hidden, especially about worlds they consider dangerous." She touched the data terminal, and a holographic image sprang to life between them. A blue and green sphere with swirling white clouds rotated slowly. "This is Earth," Ilara said. Virilith studied the image. It looked pleasant enough. Too much water for her taste, but otherwise unremarkable. "It looks peaceful," she said. "That's what makes Earth so deceptive," Ilara replied. She touched the terminal again and the image changed. Now Virilith saw a landscape being torn apart by winds so powerful they uprooted trees. Another touch and the scene shifted to a mountain spewing liquid fire. Another and massive waves crashed against a coastline, destroying everything in their path. Image after image flashed before them. Vast deserts where nothing could survive. Regions so cold that gases froze solid. Forests burning in unstoppable fires. Lands shaking and splitting apart. Earth has every kind of natural disaster, Ilara explained. Hurricanes, volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, blizzards, floods, tornadoes, droughts. Some regions experience all of these within a single lifetime. Virilith's scales prickled with disbelief. No single planet has all those conditions. Earth does. And that's just the environment. Ilara changed the display again. Then there's the wildlife. Images of Earth's animals appeared. Creatures with massive teeth and claws. Venomous creatures smaller than a finger that could kill in minutes. microscopic organisms that cause devastating diseases. We evolved alongside these, Alara said, her voice taking on a hint of pride. Predators that hunted us, parasites that infected us, bacteria and viruses that killed millions before we developed medicines to fight them. Viralith leaned closer to the display. Some of the creatures resembled the predators of Terrax 7, but others were unlike anything she had seen. If this is true, she said, how did your species survive? You have no natural weapons, no protective scales or armor. We survived through adaptation, Alara touched her head. Our brains developed instead of our bodies. We created tools, weapons, shelters. We learned to control fire when other animals fled from it. We developed complex language and social structures. The human touched the terminal again, and the image changed to show primitive humans hunting a creature much larger than themselves, using simple spears and working together. But physical adaptation isn't what makes humans different, Alara continued. It's our mental and social evolution. We became the apex predator of Earth not through strength, but through cooperation and intelligence. Viralith tilted her head, trying to reconcile the small, seemingly fragile being before her with the history she described. If humans are as adaptive as you claim, why isn't Earth in the Confederation records? Why would Professor Zarthal deny knowing about it? Alara's expression grew more serious. That's what I've been trying to discover since I arrived. Earth made contact with the Confederation 50 years ago, but information about us is restricted. When I applied to the Academy, my application was initially rejected without explanation. It took diplomatic pressure from our government to gain acceptance. But why would... A sound from the library entrance cut Viralith's question short. Both of them froze, listening. Someone's coming, Viralith whispered, her hunting instincts automatically assessing the footsteps. Heavy, probably a security guard. Alara quickly shut down the terminal, the holographic images vanishing instantly. She slipped the device into her bag and gestured toward a narrow gap between two shelving units. This way. Viralith hesitated. Following the human meant committing to something that increasingly felt dangerous, yet her curiosity burned stronger than her caution. She followed Alara through the gap and down a narrow service corridor that Viralith hadn't even noticed. They emerged in a different section of the library, far from where they had been. How did you know about that passage? Viralith asked. I explore, Alara said simply. It's a human trait. We're curious by nature. They found seats in a busier section of the library, where several students were studying. Here they would look like any other students having a discussion. You still haven't answered my question, Viralith pressed. Why would information about Earth be restricted? Alara looked around before answering, her voice low. The official reason is ongoing assessment of compatibility with Confederation species. The real reason? Fear. Viralith couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. What could the Confederation possibly fear from your kind? What does any established power fear? Change, competition, different ways of thinking. Alara leaned forward. Humans adapt faster than any species the Confederation has encountered. We went from primitive tool use to space travel in less than 10,000 years. Most species take 50,000 to 100,000 years to make the same journey. Viralith's spines rose in surprise. That's impossible. It's documented, and it frightens the leadership. Alara's voice dropped even lower. But there's more. Earth itself is classified information, but I've found fragments of reports suggesting our planet is actually categorized beyond a standard death world. What do you mean? There's a classification above death world, something called a Class 5 extinction planet. Planets so hostile that intelligent life shouldn't evolve there at all. From what I've pieced together, Earth may be the only known Class 5 that produced a spacefaring species. Viralith felt a chill run along her spine. If true, this would upend everything she believed about her own species' superiority. I need proof, she said, not just images that could be fabricated. Real evidence, Alara nodded. That's fair, and I think I know how to get it. She glanced at the chronometer on the wall. But not here. We need to meet somewhere more private. My dormitory has private study rooms, Viralith suggested. No, academy spaces are monitored. Alara thought for a moment. There's a botanical garden in the lower city. Sector 7. It has a greenhouse with Terran plants, a small piece of Earth. Meet me there tomorrow after classes. From across the library, neither of them noticed the administrative officer watching their interaction. Dressed in the gray uniform of a junior staff member, he looked unremarkable. Just another worker managing the Academy's day-to-day operations. But when Virulith and Alara parted ways, he touched a communicator hidden beneath his collar. "They've made contact again," he reported. "The Draconid appears to be believing the human's claims." A voice responded, audible only through bone conduction technology implanted in his ear. "Continue monitoring. If they access restricted files, intervene. Otherwise, let this play out. We need to know how much the human actually knows." The administrator acknowledged the order and followed Virulith at a discreet distance, wondering if the Draconid understood how dangerous the path she was taking truly was. Meanwhile, in his private office, Professor Zarthal reviewed the security footage from Section X9 before it was mysteriously erased from the system. His hands trembled slightly as he watched the images the human had shown. "Computer," he said, his voice strained. "Access restricted file E15, authorization Zarthal Prime," the computer hummed. "File accessed. Warning, information classified. Unauthorized sharing is punishable by exile. Display threat assessment, humans," the screen filled with data. As he read, the professor's four eyes widened in mounting horror. "By the void," he whispered. "It's worse than I imagined." 3 days after their meeting at the botanical garden, Virulith found herself staring at Professor Zarthal as he made a surprising announcement to the xenobiology class. "The Academy has approved my proposal for a practical field examination," he declared, his four eyes gleaming with unusual intensity. "In 2 weeks, we will travel to Nexus 9, a moon with challenging environmental conditions. There, the strongest among you will demonstrate true Deathworlder superiority." Excited murmurs filled the classroom. Field trips outside the Confederation capital were rare, especially to potentially dangerous locations. "This competition," the professor continued, "will test your survival skills in harsh conditions. The winners will receive special recognition from the Academy Council and automatic placement in advanced studies." Virulith noticed how Professor Zarthal's upper eyes kept drifting to where Alara sat. The human's face remained expressionless, but her posture had tensed slightly. After class, Virulith hurried to catch up with Alara in the hallway. "Did you see how he kept looking at you?" she whispered. "This competition seems suspicious." Alara nodded. "It's a response to our investigation. He's setting up a demonstration to prove that recognized Deathworlders like you are superior. Will you enter?" Virulith asked. "I can't. Look." Alara showed Virulith her datapad displaying the competition requirements. One line was highlighted. "Open only to students from officially classified Deathworld species." Virulith's scales darkened with anger. "That's deliberately excluding you." "Of course it is," Alara said calmly. "If I participated and succeeded, it would undermine their narrative." They walked in silence for a moment before Virulith spoke again. "What if you entered unofficially?" "I could register you as my research assistant." Alara looked surprised. "Why would you do that?" "Because," Virulith said, realizing the truth as she spoke, "I want to know what's real. If humans truly evolved on a world more challenging than Terex 7, I need to see how you perform under stress." A slow smile spread across Alara's face. "Then let's give the professor a demonstration he won't forget." 2 weeks later, a transport ship descended toward Nexus 9, carrying 20 students, Professor Zarthal, and 3 safety officers. Through Virulith's careful manipulation of the registration system, Alara was aboard as a research assistant, her presence barely noticed among the excited Deathworlders. From orbit, Nexus 9 looked forbidding, a gray-green moon wrapped in swirling storms. As they approached the surface, the ship rocked violently in the turbulent atmosphere. "Atmospheric pressure is twice standard," Professor Zarthal announced. "Gravity is 1.3 standard. Temperature ranges from freezing to scalding depending on location. The air is breathable but thin at higher elevations." The ship landed in a small clearing surrounded by twisted vegetation. When the doors opened, hot, humid air rushed in, carrying unfamiliar scents. "Welcome to Nexus 9, the professor said. "Your challenge begins now. Each team must reach the northern extraction point within 3 days, crossing 50 kilometers of wilderness. You will find survival packs outside, 1 per team. Choose your path wisely." The students disembarked, forming into teams of 2 or 3. Virulith and Alara were the only mixed-species team. drawing curious and sometimes mocking glances from the others. A Vorax student with chitinous plates covering his body approached them, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "Viralith, why burden yourself with a soft skin? She'll slow you down." "Mevnar, always charming," Viralith replied coolly. "My choice of partner is my business." Mevnar leaned closer, studying Alara with compound eyes. "What species are you, anyway? Some kind of immature galleon?" "Human," Alara said simply. "Never heard of it." Mevnar shrugged his plated shoulders. "Doesn't matter. See you at the extraction point if you make it." He rejoined his team, a pair of fellow Vorax who shared his dismissive attitude. Viralith and Alara collected their survival pack and studied the basic map provided. The northern extraction point was marked, but everything between their landing site and the destination was labeled simply as unexplored terrain. "Two main routes," Viralith observed. "Through the valley or over the ridgeline. Everyone else is taking the valley," Alara noted, watching the other teams head north. "It looks easier." "Which means it's probably not," Viralith said. "The professor wouldn't make this too simple," Alara smiled. "The ridge, then?" Viralith nodded, and they set off toward the eastern heights. The climb was strenuous. The vegetation grew denser as they ascended, thorny vines grasping at their clothes and equipment. The air, as predicted, grew thinner. Viralith moved with natural grace, her clawed feet finding purchase on the rocky slope. She expected to have to wait for Alara, but the human kept pace surprisingly well, moving with an efficient economy of motion. "You're stronger than you look," Viralith observed when they paused for water. "Not stronger," Alara corrected, "more enduring. Humans aren't built for bursts of power like draconids. We're built for persistence." They reached the ridge by nightfall and made camp in the shelter of a rock formation. From their elevated position, they could see distant lights in the valley below, other teams making camp. As they ate from their ration packs, Viralith asked a question that had been bothering her. "You said humans succeeded through intelligence and cooperation, not physical adaptation. But you're keeping up with me, a natural climber." "How?" Alara chewed thoughtfully before answering. "Physical adaptation doesn't always mean claws or armor. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. On Earth, early humans would chase prey for hours or days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion." "Days?" Viralith couldn't hide her disbelief. "We have efficient cooling systems. We sweat," Alara explained. "And our leg structure is optimized for distance running. We can maintain a steady pace for incredible distances. Most Earth predators are faster than humans in a sprint, but few can match our endurance." Before Viralith could respond, a distant rumble echoed through the night. They looked down into the valley and saw a wall of water surging through it. "Flash flood," Alara said, her voice tight. "The other teams—" They watched in horror as the camp lights in the valley scattered, some blinking out entirely as the water overwhelmed them. Emergency flares shot into the sky, and within minutes, the professor's ship rose from its landing site, searchlights scanning the floodwaters. "They'll need help," Viralith said, already packing their gear. "We should go down." "Wait." Alara held up a hand, studying the pattern of the flood. "Look at how the water's moving. There's a secondary channel forming. Anyone caught in that bend of the valley will be cut off from rescue." She pointed to a spot where several flares had gone up, now surrounded by rushing water. "The ship can't land there, and that water's too fast to swim." Viralith assessed the situation with a predator's calculating gaze. "We could reach them from this side, but we'd need to descend that cliff face. Too steep even for me." Without hesitation, Alara opened their pack and pulled out a coil of synthetic rope. "I can climb down. Humans are good climbers too. Not as good as you, but good enough." "It's too dangerous," Viralith protested. "Dangerous is what humans are built for," Alara said with a grim smile. "Anchor me." What followed tested everything Viralith thought she knew about non-Deathworlders. Alara descended the cliff with methodical precision, finding handholds where none seemed to exist, testing each foothold before committing her weight. When she reached the isolated students, 3 Chitauri caught on a diminishing island of dry land. She rigged a pulley system from the climbing gear in their pack. From her position at the top of the cliff, Viralith helped haul up the stranded students one by one as Alara guided them from below. The last Chitauri was barely clear when the remaining ground was swallowed by the flood. "Pull me up," Alara called, the water now swirling around her knees. But before Viralith could comply, The wet rock where Alara stood crumbled away. The human plunged into the raging water and was swept downstream. Without thinking, Virolith ran along the ridge, keeping pace with the current below. She saw Alara surface once, twice, fighting the water with powerful strokes. Then the human disappeared around a bend. Heart-pounding, Virolith scrambled down a less steep section of the slope, her claws digging into the earth for purchase. She reached the water's edge just as Alara emerged from the flood, dragging herself onto a muddy bank. The human lay on her back, breathing hard but alive. "Are you injured?" Virolith asked, crouching beside her. Alara coughed up water, then grinned weakly. "Just my pride. You saved them," Virolith said. "Why? You didn't even know those students." "Because they needed help," Alara said simply, as if no other explanation was necessary. The rescue ship found them an hour later, searchlights cutting through the darkness. By then, Alara had recovered enough to walk with Virolith's support. Aboard the ship, the three rescued Chitauri approached them. The leader, a female with iridescent chitin, bowed her head. "We owe you our lives," she said formally. "Especially you, human. You risked yourself for strangers." Professor Zarthal watched this exchange from across the ship's cabin, his four eyes unreadable. When the ship returned to the academy the next day, he made a brief announcement. "Due to the unfortunate weather event, the competition is postponed." His upper eyes focused on Alara. All participants performed as expected of their species' capabilities, but Virolith noticed how the other students— "We need to access the Academy's secure archives," Alara said. 3 days had passed since the Nexus 9 expedition, and they sat in a corner of the Academy's dining hall speaking in low voices. "That's impossible," Virolith replied. "Only council members and senior professors have clearance." Alara pushed her food around her plate, barely eating. "Professor Zarthal has access. I saw him use a special authorization code in the library system. Zarthal Prime." Virolith's eyes widened. "You want to use his credentials?" "That's not just against Academy rules, it's against Confederation law. So is hiding the existence of an entire sentient species," Alara countered. "Something big is happening, Virolith. The security alert mentioned File E15, but I've never heard of it. Whatever they're hiding about Earth, it's worse than I thought." Virolith struggled with her conscience. She had been raised to respect authority, to believe in the wisdom of the Confederation. Yet everything she had learned in the past weeks challenged those beliefs. "How would we even access the system?" she asked finally. "The archive terminals require biometric verification." A small smile played across Alara's face. "Did you know humans evolved as tool makers? We're quite good with technology." She slipped a small device from her pocket. "This can mimic biometric signatures if we have a base pattern to work from. Where did you get that?" Virolith hissed. "I made it," Alara said simply. "But we need Professor Zarthal's pattern. And we need to be careful. I think we're being watched." Virolith had noticed it too. A gray uniformed administrator who seemed to appear wherever they went. The man in gray. "He's security, isn't he?" Alara nodded. "Confederation intelligence, probably. They've been monitoring me since I arrived." Their opportunity came that afternoon during xenobiology lab. Professor Zarthal moved from station to station, observing students' work. When he reached their table, Alara deliberately knocked over a container of specimen samples. "I'm so sorry, Professor," she exclaimed, dropping to her knees to gather the scattered materials. As the professor leaned down to help, irritation clear in all four of his eyes, Alara's hand brushed against his wrist scanner, the device used for both identification and laboratory analysis. "Clumsy soft skin," he muttered, but there was more tension than anger in his voice. When he moved on, Alara gave Virolith a subtle nod. The biometric reader had worked. That night, when most of the academy was asleep, they made their way to the Faculty Research Center. Using a service corridor Alara had discovered in her explorations, they bypassed the main entrance and its security cameras. The archive terminal sat in a small, windowless room at the back of the center. Alara attached her device to its scanner, and after a tense moment the screen flickered to life with Professor Zarthal's credentials. "We're in," she whispered. "Search for File E15. Virolith entered the command, her clawed fingers moving carefully over the keyboard. The screen displayed a warning, "Classified file, Level 1 security, proceed." She looked at Alara, who nodded. Virolith pressed confirm, The file opened, revealing thousands of documents, images, and video recordings. At the top was a simple heading: Earth Containment Protocol, Assessment and Recommendations. Containment? Viralith whispered, a chill running along her spine. They began reading, the horror of what they discovered growing with each document. According to the earliest entries dating back over a century, Confederation scouts had discovered Earth but kept their presence hidden. They observed as humans developed technology at an unprecedented rate, advancing from primitive flight to space exploration in less than 70 years. Listen to this, Ilara said, pointing to a report. Species demonstrates alarming adaptability. Unlike standard evolutionary patterns which show specialization, humans display generalized capabilities allowing rapid adjustment to varied environments. Most concerning is their technological progression rate, estimated at 4 to 6 times Confederation average. Viralith moved to another section of the file. Psychological assessment indicates high creativity, combined with aggressive problem-solving. Species regularly engages in internal conflicts yet demonstrates rapid recovery and technological leaps following such events. They've been studying us like lab specimens, Ilara said, her voice hollow. There's more, Viralith said, opening a subfolder labeled Classification Review. The document inside was direct. After extensive debate, the Classification Committee has designated Earth as a Class 5 extinction planet, the first confirmed case in Confederation records. Standard Deathworld classification is insufficient to describe the combined threats of extreme weather events, geological instability, atmospheric variance, biodiversity of predators, pathogenic diversity, radiation threats, resource scarcity. The report concludes, Viralith read aloud, her voice shaking slightly, that intelligent life should not have evolved under such conditions. The emergence of humans represents an evolutionary anomaly, requiring further study and careful monitoring. Ilara sat back, her face pale in the terminal's blue light. This confirms what I suspected. But why contain us? Why not just make contact? Viralith navigated to a folder labeled Contact, Scenarios. What they found there answered Ilara's question in the most disturbing way possible. The Confederation had run thousands of simulations on human integration into galactic society. In 73% of scenarios, humans eventually achieved technological parity with the Confederation within 200 years, a blink of an eye in cosmic terms. In 42% of scenarios, humans surpassed Confederation technology within 500 years. And in 18% of scenarios, human influence led to the dissolution of the current Confederation power structure entirely. They're afraid we'll change everything, Ilara whispered. There's a more recent section, Viralith said, opening a folder dated just months earlier. First Contact Assessment. This document detailed the unexpected contact made when humans developed faster-than-light travel on their own, decades before Confederation models predicted they would. It described the hasty diplomatic mission sent to Earth, the limited technology sharing, and the careful restrictions placed on human expansion. Despite containment efforts, Viralith read, human progress continues to exceed projections. Recommendation: accelerated integration of limited human numbers under strict monitoring, while maintaining separation of Earth itself from mainstream Confederation knowledge. That's why I'm here, Ilara realized. I'm part of the accelerated integration, a test subject. And I'm an unwitting observer, Viralith added. They wanted to see how recognized Deathworlders would react to humans. They continued reading, moving through reports and assessments, each more revealing than the last. The Confederation had created an elaborate fiction that humans were a minor species from a less significant world. While studying them intensively, then they found something that made even Ilara gasp. Contingency Planning, the folder was labeled. Inside was a document titled Preemptive Security Options. The document outlined plans for containing human expansion by force if necessary. Options ranged from technology restriction to planetary quarantine. But the final option, labeled Extreme Contingency, described a scenario in which Earth would be rendered uninhabitable if humans were deemed an uncontrollable threat. They would destroy our planet? Ilara's voice was barely audible, Only as a last resort, Viralith said quickly, though the words felt hollow even to her. This is why information about Earth is being erased, Elara said. They're preparing for one of these contingencies and they don't want anyone asking questions when it happens. A noise from the corridor outside made them both freeze. Viralith's acute hearing detected footsteps approaching. Someone's coming, she whispered. Elara quickly copied as much of the file as she could to her data device, then disconnected from the terminal. They slipped into a storage closet just as the door to the archive room opened. Through a small crack, they could see Professor Zarthal enter, followed by the gray uniformed administrator they had noticed before. The system shows your credentials were used tonight, the administrator said, his voice cold and precise. Explain. Impossible, Professor Zarthal protested, all four of his eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. I've been in my quarters since evening meal. The administrator checked the terminal. File E15 was accessed. This is a serious breach, Professor. The council will be informed. I had nothing to do with this. The professor's voice rose in pitch. Then who did? The administrator's eyes narrowed. The human and her draconid friend, perhaps? The same ones you've been watching since that day in your classroom? Professor Zarthal's upper eyes widened while his lower ones narrowed. A complex expression Viralith recognized as fear mixed with calculation. I've followed protocol, he said defensively. I organized the Nexus 9 expedition as instructed to demonstrate Deathworlder superiority, which backfired spectacularly, the administrator noted dryly. The human saving those students has only increased curiosity about her species. That wasn't my fault. The flood wasn't supposed to. The professor stopped abruptly, realizing he had said too much. Wasn't supposed to what, Professor? The administrator asked, his voice dangerously soft. Are you suggesting the flood was planned? In the closet, Elara and Viralith. Dawn broke over Proxima City, its three suns rising in sequence to cast multiple shadows across the academy grounds. Viralith and Elara had not slept, spending the night in a small maintenance room Elara had discovered during her explorations. The council meeting is set for midday, Viralith said, checking the academy notification system on her datapad. That gives us a few hours to prepare. Elara nodded, dark circles under her eyes, the only sign of her exhaustion. She had spent the night organizing the files copied from the archive, creating a clear presentation of the most damning evidence. We need allies before we face the council, she said. People who will listen and stand with us. The Chitauri students we saved on Nexus 9, Viralith suggested. They owe you their lives, and Mevnar, despite his arrogance, values honor above all else. Good, Elara agreed. And I have a few human exchange students I trust. But we need more. Faculty, if possible, Viralith thought for a moment. Professor Lenthka from Comparative Cultures. She's always advocated for more open exchange between species. They split up to contact their potential allies, agreeing to meet at the Academy's central garden an hour before the council meeting. As Viralith moved through the campus, she noticed increased security presence. Guards at major intersections, ID checks at building entrances. Word of their confrontation with the administrator had spread. Students whispered as she passed, some fearful, others curious. A few, mostly fellow Deathworlders, watched with open hostility. The revelation that humans might be from a more challenging world than theirs threatened their status in the academy hierarchy. Viralith found the Chitauri students in the engineering lab. Zenvi, the female who had spoken to them after the rescue, listened intently as Viralith explained the situation. You claim the Confederation has classified this Earth as an extinction planet? Zenvi's antennae quivered with disbelief. And that the Nexus 9 expedition was deliberately dangerous? We have proof, Viralith said, showing her selected files from Elara's copy. The flood was engineered to demonstrate Deathworlder superiority. But when Elara saved you, it proved humans are capable of surviving extreme conditions, Zenvi finished, and of helping others survive them as well. Will you stand with us at the council meeting? Viralith asked. Zenvi's compound eyes shifted color, indicating deep thought. Finally, she said, My family has served the Confederation for 7 generations, but my life was saved by someone the Confederation would have me believe is inferior. She straightened her posture. Yes, I will stand with you. And so will my classmates. Mevnar proved more difficult. The Vorax listened to Viralith's explanation with obvious skepticism. You expect me to believe that soft-skinned creature comes from a world harsher than Terax 7? He scoffed. Impossible. I thought the same, Viralith admitted. Until I saw her save the Chitauri when no one else could. Until I read the classified files. She leaned closer. Mevnar, you value truth and honor. Can you really support a system built on lies? The Vorax was silent for a long moment, his mandibles clicking softly as he considered. I will attend your council meeting, he said finally. I make no promises beyond that. It was better than nothing. Viralith thanked him and continued her recruitment efforts. By the time she reached the central garden, she had secured the support of 12 students and 2 junior faculty members. Alara was already there, surrounded by a small group that included 4 other humans, the only ones at the academy, and Professor Lenthka, a tall, willowy being whose translucent skin revealed the flow of thoughts through neural pathways. We have gathered an audience, Professor Lenthka said, her voice musical. But I must warn you, the council will not be easily swayed. They believe deeply in the established order. Then we'll have to show them a better one, Alara replied. As midday approached, they made their way to the council chamber, a grand amphitheater at the heart of the academy. Security was heavy at the entrance, checking each person's ID against an approved list. When Viralith and Alara presented their student credentials, the guard checked his screen and nodded. You're expected. Proceed directly to the speaking platform. The chamber was larger than Viralith had imagined, with seating for hundreds arranged in rising tiers. At the bottom, a semicircular platform faced a raised dais where 9 council members sat in ornate chairs. The seats around the chamber were filling rapidly. Word of the hearing had spread throughout the academy. As Viralith and Alara took their places on the speaking platform, the administrator in gray appeared at the side of the room, watching them with cold eyes. Professor Zarthal was nowhere to be seen. The head counselor, an ancient Meridian whose age was measured in centuries, raised a gnarled hand for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. This special session is called to address serious allegations regarding Confederation security protocols, he announced, his voice surprisingly strong. The accused, student Viralith of Clandraken and exchange student Alara Hayes of Earth, have requested an open hearing rather than a closed disciplinary proceeding. He fixed them with a penetrating gaze. Be advised that such openness may not serve your interests. The charges are grave: unauthorized access to restricted files, dissemination of classified information, and incitement against Confederation authority. We understand the charges, Counselor, Alara said clearly, and we accept them. But we believe the greater breach of trust lies not in our actions, but in the Confederation's systematic deception regarding Earth and humanity. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Bold claims, the head counselor noted. You will have opportunity to present evidence. But first, the Confederation will state its case. The administrator in gray stepped forward, his manner formal and precise. Honorable counselors, esteemed faculty, students, he began. I am Administrator Vexhan, Bureau of Special Affairs. The accusations made by these students are not merely false but dangerous. They have accessed classified information without authorization, misinterpreted what they found, and now seek to disrupt the careful balance maintained by the Confederation. He activated a projection, showing Viralith and Alara entering the archive room. Their actions were premeditated. Using falsified credentials, they breached our most secure systems. Viralith felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon them. This was starting exactly as the Confederation wanted, focusing on their breach of rules rather than the content of what they had discovered. We acknowledge entering the archive, she said, standing tall. We do not deny using Professor Zarthal's credentials. But we acted because the truth was being hidden, not just from us but from everyone in the Confederation. Administrator Vexhan's expression hardened. The classification of certain information is not hiding the truth. It is protecting stability and security. Is it protection to classify an entire species as a potential threat without their knowledge? Alara asked, her voice carrying through the chamber. Is it security to develop contingency plans for planetary quarantine or worse, while pretending to engage in good faith diplomacy? She activated her data device, projecting images of Earth onto the large display screen above the council dais. This is Earth, she said. My home, classified by your experts as a Class 5 extinction planet. the only one known to have produced a spacefaring species. The images shifted, showing Earth's varied environments, raging storms, volcanic eruptions, vast deserts, ice-covered poles, dense jungles. Humans evolved on a world that, by your own classification system, should have killed us before we developed civilization. We faced predators, diseases, natural disasters, and our own violent tendencies, and we survived. She moved to the next set of images. Early humans hunting with primitive tools, building shelters, creating art, developing agriculture. We didn't just survive. We adapted. We learned. We cooperated. And eventually, we reached for the stars. The final image showed a human spacecraft. The Confederation discovered Earth a century ago, but chose to watch us in secret. When we developed faster than light travel on our own, decades before your models predicted we would, you had no choice but to acknowledge us. But even then, you classified the truth about our world and continued to study us like laboratory specimens. Administrator Vexhan stepped forward. This is precisely why such information is restricted. Revelation of Earth's classification would disrupt the established understanding of evolutionary theory and species hierarchy within the Confederation. You mean it would challenge the superiority of recognized Deathworlders, Virulith said, joining Alara at the center of the platform. It would force acknowledgement that humans evolved under conditions more challenging than Draconids, Vorax, or Chitauri. Angry muttering rose from sections of the audience where Deathworlders sat. The issue is not merely classification, Vexhan countered. File E15 contains predictive models suggesting potential instability if human expansion continues unchecked. The containment protocols were developed with the Confederation's long-term stability in mind. Show them the contingency plans, Virulith urged Ilara. Ilara nodded and brought up the most damning documents, the preemptive security options that included provisions for restricting human development, enforced planetary quarantine, and, in the worst case, rendering Earth uninhabitable. Gasps echoed through the chamber.